Hi there, everyone. This evening I want to talk about an item of news that really happened a couple of years ago, but I only found out about it a few days ago. And I have to admit, when I did, I was horrified, not only by what happened, but by the reaction to what happened. And I thought this would be a great um, place to kick off our next video in the series about critical thinking and undue influence. In the last video that I did about this topic, undue influence, I described what undue influence is. And I said that I'd be going through a series of videos focusing on different strategies that people or groups use to exert undue influence. And I went through quite a detailed definition of what undue influence is. So if you need a refresher or if you're not sure about what undue influence is, there is an excerpt in my other video that discusses undue influence. But of course, you can find definitions all over the internet as well. But essentially, undue influence is pressure that's brought to bear on a person to act in ways that are against their free will or in ways that interfere with them exercising their free will. And there are various elements that are present when undue influence is exerted. And even the law recognizes undue influence as a problematic thing that happens. And it almost always happens when someone is in a position of power over someone else. It makes it so much easier to exert undue influence when one person is in a stronger position and the other person is in a weaker position. And so the way that we counteract undue influence or the way that we avoid being taken in by undue influence and avoid being unduly influenced by others is to understand on a really fundamental, deep level how undue influence works and the various strategies and methods that are used in order to exert undue influence. Now, people in positions of authority all over the show use undue influence. And so it's so important to be aware of how this is happening so that we can be sure that the choices that we make, the words that we say, the things we believe, the actions that we take are truly representing what we believe and our own we can be confident that we're exercising our free will and that we're not being swayed to do things that we might otherwise not have done. So it's so important to study these various techniques because generally speaking, people who exert undue influence kind of follow the same sort of scripts, whether they're aware of it or not. Although there are, various ways in which undue influence can work. And so today we're going to be looking at what I like to call noble intentions, which is, I think it's a particularly insidious way that those who have power exert undue influence over others. They call upon their noble intentions as the justification and an excuse for their poor behavior and for their attempts to try and force you and coerce you to behave the way they want you to. And noble intentions work extremely well because they appeal to our better nature. They appeal to that part of us that wants to do the right thing. And it's a part of us which can even make us question ourselves. And, we find ourselves thinking, well, okay, this person claims to have these noble intentions. Who am I to oppose them? And, can I really be sure of my own intentions? And we start to doubt and second guess ourselves. And we start to even doubt and second guess what we see unfolding in front of us. So the example I want to focus on today, and I'm going to offer my commentary and my analysis as we go along, is the incident where Tom Cruise was recorded secretly yelling at his crew on the set of Mission Impossible 7, I believe it was, which was being filmed during COVID. And they had very strict safety protocols on the set about social distancing, etc. And it seems as if Tom Cruise observed some crew members standing too close together, and he really completely lost his temper. So we're going to listen to the full audio recording. And then I also want to look at some reactions to this incident from Whoopi Goldberg and Ricky Gervais, who are both pretty big celebrities in their own right. And I want to look at the ways in which they excuse Tom Cruise's behavior, because it's very interesting and fascinating. And I'm hoping that we can learn a bit about ourselves and how we respond to undue influence, and how the people around us might try to justify, really poor behavior and people way overstepping the boundaries of others. So I believe that the way that we disarm these very powerful methods of undue influence is using rationality and critical thinking. Or at least that's sort of what's always worked for me. Other people might have different techniques, but for me, what's always worked to really take the sting or the power away from someone who is trying to use undue influence is just to look at something really analytically, really objectively, and just break it down into its components and ask myself, does this make sense? Does this ring true? And can I justify this using, common sense, rationality, reasonableness, and everyday truths that I use in my life every day? And in my opinion, this is how we get ourselves out of these sorts of situations, out of bad situations, and back onto, a sane and normal track, and back to things feeling normal again. So what we're going to see is Tom Cruise behaving in a decidedly abnormal way. This is not normal, or it shouldn't be normal for anyone, I hope. And then we'll have a bit of a discussion about it. I'll play the whole video clip, and then I'll comment.
You're back there in Hollywood making movies right now because of us. Because they believe in us and what we're doing. I'm on the phone with every studio at night. Insurance companies, producers. And they're looking at us and using us to make their movies. We are creating thousands of jobs. I don't ever want to see it again. And if you don't do it, you're fired. And if I see you do it again, you're fired. And anyone on this crew does it. That's it. And you do. And you do. And you. Don't you ever do it again. That's it. No apologies. You can tell to the people that are losing their homes because our industry is shut down. It's not going to put food on the table. Pay for the college education. That's what I sleep with every night. The future is industry. So I'm sorry, I'm beyond your apologies. I told you, and now I want it. And if you don't do it, you're out. You're not shutting this movie down. Is it understood? If I see you again, you're gone. And so are you. So you're going to cost him his job. I see how it's that you're gone. And you're gone. That's it. Am I clear? Do you understand what I want? Do you understand the responsibility that you have? Because I will deal with your reason. And if you can't be reasonable, and I can't deal with your logic, you're fired. That's it. That is it. I trust you guys to be here. That's it. That's it, guys. That's what I'm doing. I'm helping you to go to Karen. Order. Movies are going because of us. We shut down, it's going to cost you. Their home, their family, that's what's happening. All the way down the line. I care about you guys. But if you're not going to help me, you're gone. Okay? So you see that shit? How many meters is that? People are standing around the computer and hanging out around here. What are you doing? We are the gold.
Right, sorry about that. Okay, so Tom Cruise is being really abusive here. I don't know about any of you guys, but even just, I've seen this clip a few times, and even just watching it, my body reacts to the way that he's speaking. And my heart rate goes up, my breathing becomes shallow. I start to feel really anxious and agitated. How do you guys feel listening to this? Listening to a man, a grown man, talking to other adults, any human being really like this. It's incredibly abusive. It's, completely unacceptable, in my opinion. But I want to play the clip again, and I want to point out what I believe are certain key moments where Cruz really appeals to his noble intentions in order to drive his message home and in order to justify the way that he's behaving here. So let's watch it again. I'm going to stop it in a few places.
You're back there in Hollywood making movies right now because of us. Because they believe in us and what we're doing. I'm on the phone with every studio night. Insurance company. Producer. And they're looking at us and using us to make their movies. We are creating thousands of jobs.
Okay, first of all, how many of you believe that Tom Cruise personally is on the phone with insurance companies and all these people that he's listing out here? I'm pretty sure Tom Cruise has a team of people helping him. He might be giving orders, but, I'm sure he's not doing it personally. He has no need to do it personally. He can pay people to do that sort of thing. But even if that's not the case, notice the God complex coming through here. The whole of Hollywood rests on my shoulders. They're making movies because of us. We're creating thousands of jobs, and those jobs all rest on the way that we behave. He is setting up this absolutely impossible standard where it's like in his mind, he's really saving the world. He's totally blurred the lines between the hero that he plays in movies and, himself as a hero in real life. We've seen this from Tom Cruise before. This is not unique to this particular incident. And this is something he has taken on. He's taken on this burden onto himself, whether it's just, for effect that he's appealing to this here, or whether he truly believes what he's saying here, that the whole fate of Hollywood is on him. I mean, it's a tremendous, as I say, a tremendous God complex that he is caught up in here.
I don't ever want to see you again. And if you don't do it, you're fired. If I see you do it again,
This may be a fairly small point, but notice he says, I don't ever want to see it again, ever. That is an impossible standard to set for people. COVID was completely unique to what pretty much anyone in our lifetime has experienced. Those social distancing regulations felt unnatural to most of us. And you would be, absolutely unreasonable and ridiculous to think that there isn't going to be the occasional time when someone might slip up and get a little bit too close to someone that they're working with all day, every day. So to set this kind of standard, I don't ever want to see it again, ever, or else you're effing gone and you're going to lose your job. He's setting people up for failure. And I think he knows this. Because, yes, sure, people can try. And I think, if people get it 90 or 95% right, they're doing incredibly well. But he's not showing any level of reasonableness. He's not conceding anything. He's not saying, okay, well, I realize this is something really difficult, and I could hire a couple of safety officers to go around the set and make sure that people are keeping their distance the way that they're supposed to. No, he's saying, I, as Tom Cruise, the big shot movie star, big shot producer, I'm going to take it upon myself to police all of you and determine that only perfection is good enough.
God. And anyone on this group does it. That's it. And you too. And you too. And you. If you ever do it again. That's it. No apologies. You can tell that the people are losing their hope because our industry is shut down. It's not going to put food on the table. They're going to college education. That's what I should do every night.
How many of you think that Tom Cruise's last thought before he goes to bed every night is about people who are losing their jobs and trying to pay for their college education and losing their homes and trying to put food on the table in Hollywood, and the people who depend on, supposedly all these many people who depend on his movie in order to do that? How many of you think that that is truly his number one priority, and not the, hundreds of millions of dollars that he personally is going to be bringing in from this movie? Because we're going to see there's a real disconnect here between what Tom Cruise says he's concerned about and the way that he is trying to excuse his behavior. So he's claiming to be so concerned about people and their welfare, and that's the burden that's sitting on his shoulders. Well, this rant that he's going on is not going to help those people whatsoever. If he's threatening people's jobs, threatening to fire people, how concerned is he really? It all just is incredibly disingenuous. It completely throws into question these noble intentions that he claims to have. So, you'll forgive me, Mr. Cruise, if I'm somewhat skeptical.
The future is industry. So I'm sorry, I'm beyond your apology.
And there he refers to the future of the industry. Well, again, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, does it? If he's referring to the COVID guidelines, the social distancing, he's kind of losing himself here. And it could just be because he's really heated up and he's just completely lost his cool, that he's not making a lot of sense. But, it's not really the future of the industry. There are, hundreds, if not thousands, of other Hollywood actors, and there are directors and producers and people making movies other than his own movie. It's this massive God complex that he's got. He's imbuing himself with much, much more power and control than he really has. And here where he says, I'm beyond your apologies, again, he's setting up his crew for failure. This is exactly what a really bad manager does. They paint a subordinate into a corner of being a naughty child who cannot win back their favor. Apologies are not going to do it. They don't care about your intentions. They don't care about whether you were trying. They don't care about the quality of your work. You screw up once and that's it. They don't care about anything else and they don't want to hear it from you. And this is something you really need to watch out for with abusive bosses in particular, but just with abusive people in general. They make it so that you can't ever come back if you make a mistake.
I have told you, and now I want it. And if you don't do it, you're out. You're not shutting this movie down.
And there you have it. He says, we're not shutting this movie down. And I believe him. He has too much money riding on this movie to shut it down. So no matter what this crew does or doesn't do, he's not shutting the movie down. So him threatening them and saying, well, if they don't do X, Y, and Z, they're going to have to shut the movie down. Tom Cruise is not going to shut the movie down. That movie is going ahead, come hell or high water.
Is it understood? If I see you again, you're gone. And so are you. So you're going to cost him his job.
This is another thing that abusive people do. They make a threat, and they're the ones who make the threat and who threaten a particularly unpleasant action, such as threatening to fire someone. But they can't take responsibility for that action. They can't say, well, I chose to fire this person and that was my choice, and so that's on me. They have to blame someone else for it because they're not capable of taking that accountability. So when he says you're going to cost him his job, it's Tom Cruise being unable to take responsibility for the choice that he would make to fire someone. He needs to blame it on the person who wasn't social distancing. Even though, he doesn't have to fire that person, he is making that choice to fire them. But it's, again, just a complete lack of accountability.
My deal is that you're gone, and you're gone. That's it. Am I clear? Do you understand what I want? Do you understand the responsibility that you have?
So here he's really infantilizing his crew. He's treating them like children, just behaving as if their intellect is far inferior to his. And this again is something that people exercising undue influence, people who are abusive, this is something that they do. They will say things that imply that they have little respect for your intelligence and your ability to be reasonable.
Because I will deal with your reason. And if you can't be reasonable, and I can't deal with your logic, you're fired.
Right, okay, so I'm done with that. As I said, this is really abusive behavior, and it's just unacceptable. When we see behavior like this should be giant red flags, alarm bells ringing. It really doesn't matter what reason a person gives for behaving this way. This is abuse. This is when I spoke in other videos about how we need to have much, much higher standards when it comes to what we expect from other people and how they treat us. This should be so far below anything that we should tolerate. You can't possibly be a person who loves themselves and continues to put up with abuse like this. It will erode your self-esteem and your love for yourself faster than anything else. When someone behaves like this, run. Honestly, whether it's the boss, whether it's a parent, a friend, I don't care. Just get away from them. They are dangerous. Okay. So let's go to Whoopi Goldberg's commentary on Tom Cruise's behavior. And she's really, she makes apologies for the way that he's behaved. And I want to look at what she said because it's really interesting.
Tom Cruise is in the middle of filming Mission Impossible 7, and audio was just leaked from the set where he was not happy with some crew members who were...
Notice she says he was not happy. Well, that's an understatement if I've ever heard one. He was furious. He was enraged. He was having a rage fit. When I think of someone who's unhappy, I think of someone who's maybe disappointed or a little bit down. I don't think of someone who is swearing, hurling abuse, threatening people. That's gone way beyond unhappy. But notice how she tries to whitewash his behavior, because what she's going to say next is going to be apologizing for him.
Ignoring COVID safety protocols. Take a listen.
I don't ever want to see it again. Ever. And if you don't do it, you're fired. And I see you do it again, you're gone. That's it. No apologies. If you tell the people that are losing their home, because our industry is shut down.
And people, some people don't understand that why he would get so angry.
It's not that they don't understand why he would get so angry. Feelings are normal, and he can be as angry as he likes. It's his behavior that people have a problem with. You can be as angry as you want, but you don't have the right to talk to people any old how. That's just, none of us have that right. I don't care who you are. And that's what people have a problem with. It's not that they can't understand why he's upset. It's that they find his behavior unacceptable.
I get it. That's his movie. And if he goes down with COVID, the movie's done. It's 5-6 weeks down. You can keep going. You can get a new camera operator. No disrespect to camera operators. You can get a new sound man. But you can't get another Tom Cruise. It's him. And if he's looking over and he can see you not doing what you're supposed to be doing, it's kind of like a little bit of a middle finger.
So Whoopi Goldberg here is essentially saying, because he's Tom Cruise, because he is who he is, and, let's not kid ourselves, he is an incredibly massive movie star. He headlines hundreds of millions of dollars movies. I believe some of his Mission Impossible movies have grossed over $1 billion. So yes, he's a very big deal. And she's unashamedly using his status and his size as a movie star to excuse his behavior. You can get another camera operator, but you can't get another Tom Cruise. Notice also how she's shifting the conversation away completely. In his rant, Tom Cruise claimed over and over again that what he was concerned about were the people losing their homes. losing their jobs, the industry as a whole. Now Whoopi Goldberg is saying, okay, well, it's actually, she's saying, well, it's him that he's concerned about. It's himself he's concerned about, and it's him that we should all be concerned about. It's Tom Cruise. Anything is excusable and acceptable because there's only one of him. What kind of message is this to be sending? If you're Tom Cruise, you can treat people like shit. I mean, and she's saying that, people slipping up and not abiding by safety guidelines is giving Tom Cruise the middle finger. I don't see it that way, and I very much doubt that that's what they were doing. No one does that kind of thing intentionally to, as an intentional FU to Tom Cruise. It'd be a case of, a slip up, or perhaps people forgot, or it was no one, wanted to lose their jobs. Or maybe they weren't taking the guidelines seriously. Whatever the reason was, it wasn't a personal attack on Tom Cruise. I can guarantee that. And Whoopi Goldberg's more concerned with Tom Cruise as a person and, the cult of personality that surrounds Tom Cruise, more than anything else. And that's what I find to be really concerning. She's expressing this opinion on The View, which is it's a popular talk show. And this is the kind of thing we see in the media, excusing abuse and bad behavior. So let's go ahead and watch what Ricky Gervais had to say about this incident in an interview where he was asked about it. He's also really apologetic about Tom Cruise's behavior. I mean, he kind of he goes on to say that that he himself wouldn't behave that way, but then he kind of, like Whoopi Goldberg, he says he understands. So let's take a listen to what he has to say.
But I get it. Imagine the pressure on that man. Imagine the pressure on him, right? It's like, forget the pandemic. Those films absolutely rest on his shoulders. And, they have done for like 30 or 40 years. So, I've done jobs where I've taken a bit of cash that I didn't quite like, and I've wanted to give the money back the next day. So imagine the amount of money that he's been paid, right? So it must be terrifying.
By the way, I've never had that experience. I've wanted to give the money back. I've had them request it back for my contribution.
Yeah, but honestly, I don't have the pressure that he has. I don't even do the junkets. I do 3 or 4 junkets if I've got something out.
So again, like Whoopi Goldberg, Ricky Gervais is excusing Tom Cruise's behavior because of who Tom Cruise is, because of his money, because of the amount of money riding on this project, and because of the pressure that would bring with it. Presumably, they're saying that pressure could lead someone to have these sorts of outbursts. And I think that's a really dangerous way of thinking, because whilst, yes, when we're under pressure, it can make it more likely for us to lose our temper, the sort of abuse that we saw Tom Cruise perpetrating against his crew is never something that should be excused, or pandered to, or made okay, or made to look reasonable, which is what Whoopi Goldberg and Ricky Gervais are doing here. They're making it seem reasonable, and it isn't, and it should never be. There are other ways of dealing with pressure, and that is what we need to demand of other people. We need to not demand, that's the wrong word, because you can't make other people behave in any way, behave the way you want them to, or you can't make other people do anything, least of all Tom Cruise. But we need to require better. We need to, through what we accept and don't accept, we need to be sending the message that, I don't care how much money is riding on this movie. I don't care how much pressure you're under. This is not good enough.
Because I'm lower risk because I don't do $300 million movies. I do $5 and $10 million series or movies. So, and I do my favourite things. Whereas this guy doesn't sleep probably for 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And then he's got to do 3 weeks of up at 6. And even Ben Stiller told me one junket he did because it's a night museum. It was like the 3rd one. It was a big deal. He did a junket till 1 a.m. one day.
This is their choice, though. And I'm not unsympathetic to the life that movie stars lead, and how fast-paced and high-pressured it is, and how much work goes into it. I'm sure that they're exhausted. I'm sure that they're worked, to the absolute max. If they're being paid that kind of money, you can be sure that those movie studios are getting their pound of flesh. But at the same time, this is their choice. Those movie stars could choose to set boundaries. And instead, Tom Cruise is choosing to let off steam by yelling at his crew. That is not okay. If he is overworked, stressed out, doesn't sleep, just worked to the bone, that is, sorry to say it, his problem. And he needs to deal with that in more productive ways. Yelling at his crew and letting off steam might make him feel better for like maybe an hour or two, but the pressure's going to be right back on. What is he going to do? Have, human punching bags around him all the time that he can just yell at anytime he feels under pressure? To be perfectly honest, being Tom Cruise, I think that's probably exactly what he does do. He takes out his stress and frustration and pressure on those around him. And I say this because I've heard these stories from multiple sources, not in Hollywood.
Now, that would put me away. That would put me in a fucking asylum. And I just can't think of the...
Me too. I mean, that's why I would never work in Hollywood. But if I did, I can tell you in no uncertain terms that I would be practicing better self-care and better self-control. I would never allow myself to get to the point where I was being abusive to people around me. And I think it's very telling that Tom Cruise gives himself permission to behave that way.
Constant pressure. He can't say, I don't feel like this, or it's not worth it. Because someone will say, we're giving you 50 million for this, and if it just gets number 1, your career's over, right? He has that.
And there it is. It comes down to selfish motives for Tom. He he can talk about his noble intentions and caring about people's jobs and the industry and people putting food on the table all he likes. But it comes down to selfish intentions. It comes down to the amount of money he's been paid and the pressure, that's on him because of the contract that he's signed, and his career. It's completely selfishly motivated. I'm not going to say he doesn't care at all about other people's jobs. I think he probably cares a little bit. But, ultimately, his rant is about himself because that's how selfish people behave. They become abusive when their own, interests are threatened. They don't think about other people, other people's feelings and other people's well-being. That's not in the nature of an abusive person. What is in the nature of an abusive person is to think about themselves and to be abusive to other people when other people threaten their interests in some way.
His fucking head every minute of the day. I'm surprised he's not stranger than he is. You know, being one of the most famous people in the world from 1920, whatever it was. That changes you. That
Yeah.
God. Look,
Yeah.
I don't know what we'd be like. Imagine, I luckily I didn't have any money and any fame until I was 40. It was already done. I was already me. But imagine that, and it's still nowhere near the league that Tom Cruise is in and inhabits, right? For 40 years, whatever it is. Imagine what it must be like. Honestly, it's not normal. It's just not normal.
I'm going to give it to Ricky Gervais and say that he is much more compassionate than I think Tom Cruise probably maybe deserves here. Ricky Gervais is showing a great deal of empathy and compassion for Tom Cruise in this situation, and I applaud him for that. But I think by this stage in Tom Cruise's career, it's gone beyond, that's just what fame does to a person. By this point in Tom Cruise's life and in his career, he is who he is. He has chosen his way of dealing with people. And so, as I say, I commend Ricky Gervais's compassion, but I think he's using his own empathy that he feels, and he's putting himself in Tom Cruise's shoes. And he's sort of whitewashing what Tom Cruise has done and the way that he's behaved. And he's excusing it, which is really unfortunate.
1991, someone came up to me and said, "We thought you should have been the headliner," and I've been a cunt ever since. It changed me completely.
Well, you have got to curb yourself, because if you get everything you want and people do everything you say, again, that's not normal. There was a famous Roman emperor who hired someone to walk behind him saying, "You're just a man. You're just a man. You're just a man," because they treat him like a god. And I mean, to have that, he probably was still a complete cunt. The first time he said it, he went, "Cheers." The second time he said it, he said, "Kill him. Kill this." I know, it is strange. Also, never mind firing people for not wearing a mask. What fucker recorded that and gave it to the paper?
I know.
That's what we were saying before. It's really irritating. Someone had to, because the boss was yelling at them. They had to.
Now look at what they're doing here. Now they're done excusing Tom Cruise's behavior. Now they're shifting the focus to blaming the person who recorded Tom Cruise yelling at them. And they're disparaging this person who made the recording and gave it to the paper. And they're minimizing what's happened by saying, "Oh, but because your boss was yelling at you." As if this is sort of an everyday thing, that people shouldn't be recording it, people shouldn't be making a big deal out of it. This is just nothing. You have no right to record it. You have no right to publicize it. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say unequivocally and unashamedly, the way that Tom Cruise behaved was absolutely reprehensible, and nobody needs to deal with that from a boss ever. If my boss had behaved that way and I could have recorded them speaking that way, I probably would have as well. If my boss was Tom Cruise, I would believe that the world had a right to know the sort of person that he was and how he treats his subordinates. And I want to tell, for anyone who's listening to this video and who might have a boss who treats them that way or who yells at them, I want to just tell you right here and right now, you do not have to put up with a boss who treats you that way or who speaks to you like that. If you are in that kind of job, leave. I know that's easier said than done. I know that people rely on their salaries and jobs are not always easy to come by. But if you are in that sort of situation that your boss is treating you that way, start to make plans to look for a new job. Get out of there. That is abuse, and it will destroy you over time. Nobody should be in that sort of situation. I would like to live in a world where a boss starts behaving that way and everyone just leaves the room and says, you know what, I won't work with you. I won't be spoken to like that. Not today and not ever, because I can tell you right now, that is how I would be. And that is how I am. My boss never raises her voice to me, never calls me names, never is abusive, treats me with respect, values me, creates a harmonious working environment where people are respected and valued, and there's absolutely no raising of voices, no insults. That's just shoddy management, to put it quite plainly. That is a person who does not know how to manage. A person who has to resort to verbal abuse is someone who is lacking in management skills and doesn't understand what it's all about when it comes to managing a team and getting people's best work out of them. I mean, to me, the fact that Tom Cruise behaved that way tells me a few things. Either he hasn't had management training and he assumes that he is above having any sort of management skills taught to him, or learning best practices about how to motivate your team and deal with staff. Or else he has had that sort of training and he just believes he knows better and he doesn't care. Either way, it reflects very poorly on him as a boss. And I find it really rather disgusting that the people in this commentary video are acting as if that's just a regular day at the office,
I love the way the boss yelled at them.
I know. And you know what? Honestly, things like that happen. Or everyone, someone goes, "Oh, be careful! Oh, that's a mistake! Oh, okay, let's try again." Everyone's. You've got. There's got to be discipline. I always see both sides of it.
Again, Ricky Gervais just totally whitewashing what Tom Cruise did, completely minimizing his behavior. Tom Cruise didn't say, "Oh, watch out, that's a mistake," or "Please don't do that." He yelled, he exploded, he called people names, he threatened their jobs. He behaved awfully to these people. And although, we don't know perhaps how many times these people might have been warned about the safety guidelines before Tom Cruise exploded, I'm going to just go out on a limb and say that I very much doubt that proper, lines of communication were followed and that civil, respectful communication was ongoing on the set. I think Tom Cruise is someone who just explodes because he feels like it. And yes, as I say, people might have known the safety guidelines, but he didn't exercise any kind of self-control to put in other measures before losing his cool. Losing your cool like that and exploding and being verbally abusive should never be an option. It really shouldn't. There are far superior and more effective ways to communicate and deal with people.
It's always because I've been on both sides of it, and some people take the piss, and I don't know what. Do you know what it was? I assume it was someone walking in without a mask or something. I don't know.
Hovering around a computer screen too closely. And Sam and I just talked about this too. We didn't know if it had happened before. Like if it was something that was a recurring. It did, right? It sounded like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it must have. I mean, no one does that the first time someone gets too close to a computer.
Ricky Gervais is saying, oh, well, it must have been an ongoing problem. And, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. And Tom Cruise just exploded because it was one too many times that he had to explain the rules to people. But again, he doesn't know that. And, he he's giving a pass to Tom Cruise because he is assuming that these people had been explained the rules many times before and that they were just, taking the piss, in his own words. And just notice how he is making these comments in order to make Tom Cruise's behavior okay. I just think it's really interesting. We're going to stop that commentary video there. And yeah, I hope you found that interesting. For me, what was particularly interesting is the way in which both Whoopi Goldberg and Ricky Gervais attributed these noble intentions to Tom Cruise, and the way in which Tom Cruise attributed those noble intentions to himself, about how much he cares about his crew and about people's jobs and about the industry as a whole and people's college education and their homes and putting food on the table and all this kind of thing. He appeals to noble intentions over and over and over again, to the point that even people like Whoopi Goldberg and Ricky Gervais are buying into this whole narrative that Tom Cruise is this put upon, savior of the world, this godlike figure who just has so much pressure on his shoulders, and you can't blame him for being verbally abusive once in a while. So just notice how this happens and how people like that get away with that behavior. I also think it's worth pointing out, or worth noting, that both Whoopi Goldberg and Ricky Gervais are speaking about this incident as if it's a one-off, as if, they're focusing just on this one little slice of behavior and saying, okay, well, obviously in this particular situation, Tom Cruise was kind of justified for the way that he behaved. They're not looking at Tom Cruise's personality as a whole and in totality and putting together the puzzle pieces of who Tom Cruise is as a person. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I have heard from other sources that this habit of exploding at people for very minor infractions and for making mistakes and threatening people and yelling at people and being verbally abusive is very much part of Tom Cruise's modus operandi. And I'll link a couple of videos in the description if you are interested in taking a look. This is how he treats people. This is not just his reaction to people not following COVID guidelines on a movie set. This is who he is. He's an abusive person. And he uses his status and this God complex that he has in order to make people afraid of him and threaten people because he's powerful, and to get people to do what he wants. And so even if we look at factors like the fact that his wife, Katie Holmes, or his ex-wife, Katie Holmes, actually had to plan a secret escape from the marriage in order to get away from him and divorce him, and because he was having her watched and controlled and followed 24/7, and things must have been so intolerable and so she must have felt so trapped and so dominated by him that she had to plan this elaborate escape in order to get out of her marriage to him. And the fact that he hasn't seen his daughter from that marriage in, many, many years. He's gone on record publicly as, speaking about how there is a disconnection in his relationship with his daughter that is his own choice. So we have to look at his behavior in the context of who he is and his past behavior, and we can start to put together a picture of someone who is a very aggressive, dominating and controlling person who is not above abusing other people and using them in order to further his own aims. But for the purposes of this video, I just wanted to look at some of the things people say and the ways in which people use noble intentions in order to sweeten or minimize or whitewash really, really bad behavior. And you need to really watch out for that. Verbal abuse, any kind of abuse, is not excusable under any circumstances. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what the situation is. If you see that kind of thing from a person, if someone treats you that way, run. And that's where I'm going to end off this video. And I'll see you next time.